Hey guys, all few of you. I forgot to set up the live stream until like a few minutes ago. So my apologies. I had every plan to be here, but I was traveling this week and I don't know. I thought I had it all set up because you could set up these things, several of them in advance. They're scheduled. I think they show up. Well, maybe they don't show up until like an hour before on YouTube. An hour or so, or a few hours before they actually go off, I think. But nonetheless, I didn't even have it like scheduled in the other software that that I use. So I don't know what you guys saw. As you can see, even I don't know if you see the thumbnail. It's just plain. I don't know. Maybe that'll be better. Anyway, we're small and tight in here right now, so make sure you can hear me. Hi, R. Willie. Can you just let me know that you can hear me? Just want to make sure before I babble any further. Anybody? Just post it in the chat. Yes, I can hear you. I assume, Willie, you would say so, maybe. Anyway, what's going on, guys? Anything exciting? Post your questions. I see someone's in here. Jen Mee's here. Hi, Jen. Lima Charlie. What does that mean? What does that mean, Willie? Lima Charlie. Oh, Jen, let's see. Thank you, Frederick. I appreciate it. Loud and clear. Okay, first question. We're small right now, guys. I don't know if people are going to be aware that we're doing this today. But let me get to Jen. Hi, Stephanie. Happy Wednesday. You too, Jen. I had my remand hearing, and it was weird. Okay. Many things. One, at the end, she didn't come back to me and ask if I had anything to say. She doesn't have to. I mean, that's your attorney's job if you have something to say. Sometimes they do, but they don't have to. I mean, you have a representative, so probably if you are pro se, she may have, because she would know that you may not know and you don't have an attorney to tell you that if you have something to say, you can put it in there. But I'm assuming if you had something to say, you would have talked to your lawyer about it, right? And your lawyer would have said she would like to speak. And then at your own risk, of course. But I don't find that very strange at all. That's probably more than half the times. It's probably the majority. So, and I say that if you're represented, I can't speak to pro ses because, hi RD, I see you in the house, because it would presumably be a little bit different. They kind of hold your hand a little more, Doesn't really change the substance per se, but and the results, but all right. So that's my thoughts. Anything else on that, Jen, you want to share? Because it's not like we have a ton of questions here today. And I don't know if you were here earlier, Jen. You probably were. I just put up the live stream. I completely forgot to set it up until minutes ago. So we might have a slow walking Wednesday, but that's okay. I have a slew of things on my desk to get to, so it's all good. And as I was saying, and I'll just babble a little bit while we wait for any questions, I was in the Harrisburg area working, and it was beautiful. Oh my gosh, and it's still beautiful. I'm back in Stroudsburg, and it's really is stunning out there. But I don't know. It's just such a peaceful place for me to work compared to here, because here is, of course, all the crazies, meaning the zoo. And so it's kind of nice to work out there. The more the better is the way I look at it. All right, Jen has another question. Guys, seriously, if you have anything you want to share, please feel free. Jen says, it was also aggressively short, and she didn't ask the limitation questions. No, okay, so first of all, the judge isn't, your attorney is the one that direct examines you. A judge only asks you if she needs to know something else that's, wouldn't be evident from the records, the history, what's already been involved, because she's got both the old case stuff and the new case stuff. So if she doesn't have a question that would impact the findings, and your attorney didn't think there was anything missing, because that's his job to bring it up if there is. So there are many judges, Jen, who They usually say it at the outset. I'd say my judges, although I don't really have my judges anymore because I'm all over the country, but they usually, hi Dimple, they usually, do the intros, do the mandatories of swearing you in and all that business and getting us to all test that we're not taping the video or anything like that, and that we're alone in a secluded room where no one else can hear. And they usually, if they're going to have, well, what probably happened for you, or else your attorney couldn't have, wouldn't have known where to start. She asked whatever basics she wanted and then said, counselor, it's all yours. In other words, it's your hearing. I mean, it's your hearing, and he's your lawyer or she's your lawyer. So it's their show to run. It always is. Some judges will take a bunch of questions that they want to know first to get it out of the way. And then it's always open for the lawyer to then, and presumably they usually do, unless it's really clear the judge is going to award for her questions and or a VE, but you would be testifying before the VE would be questioned. They leave it, the case is yours to direct. And sometimes they will say to me, counselor, I'm going to, they ask the basics like your name and how you spell it and your address and all that and confirm everything's good for getting you mail. And they go, counselor, take it away. And then that's why we have like a 2 to 3 hour pre-hearing preparation, my clients and I, before the hearing. Not the same day, but either the day before or 2 or 3 days before, close in time to the hearing so they don't forget a lot. But that's where we go over all the questions that I think the judge could ask, and if not, I'm going to. And if he does and she responds this way, I know because of our discussion in the file that I've got to ask her more about that because she didn't share all the things that would be helpful. She just answered him yes and no, which a lot of people do, which isn't a bad idea if you have a lawyer who's then going to extrapolate the rest of it in the way she wants to make sure you say what we were discussing that you told me about that I want you to now tell the judge. You follow? Like if the judge says, do you drive? And the person says, yes, and then clamps down, that's when I would be like, assuming my client doesn't drive, say, beyond locally or something, that would be already checkmarked in my notes during the hearing, like, all right, got to go back to driving. Let her tell that she doesn't drive normally anymore. She doesn't drive a 3-hour trip, out of state or, God forbid, out of the country or at night or multiple days of the week. She can't drive at all because of symptoms. So, so it's really the onus is on the claimant. And if they choose to have, don't have, if they have an attorney or a non-attorney rep, on them to do all those questions that the judge, if they asked any at all, did not cover. Because remember, the judge doesn't know your case as well as your attorney does, and certainly not as well as you do. I mean, you know the facts, maybe not the law as much as the facts, and the attorney's the other side of it that knows which of those facts will be relevant to the law that would apply to you. So that part is not a problem at all. And short is usually good for claimants because they kind of suffer through these things. So if there's no need to drag it out and be painful, I would say that's kindly short, not aggressively short. And it was the last of the day at 2:30. Wow, they cut out early out there. Mine out here they go to like 4:30. I'm wondering if the last one is scheduled at 4. If I ever had one at 4:30, I can't remember. I mean, obviously it would end 4:30 or 5 if you have it at 4. Yeah, 2:30 is exceptionally early, so I don't know. Maybe she had a part-time day or something. All right, so Jen, just so you guys are up to speed, Jen's saying that the judge did not ask her how much she can lift, stand, sit questions. Why? Well, here's the thing, Jen. You already answered those. Why do you need to? I mean, unless you want her to trick you and ask them again, and your answer is probably not going to be exactly the same as your function report. but you've already submitted those questions specifically in your function report. Now, let's say in your function report a year ago or 2 years ago, you could sit, stand, all that stuff perfectly fine because your issue was completely mental. And let's say that's changed. You got older, maybe you got some arthritis, maybe you had an accident, something, and she didn't ask it. That would be your lawyer's job to bring that out. The judge is really going to only ask things that could impact the decision. So, you know, as a younger individual, you look young to me, you have to prove, I mean, limitations in sitting, standing, and all that are going to be almost, I got to say this carefully. So I'm saying this very generally. It doesn't apply to everything, but almost irrelevant because a young person, a younger individual, as they say, would have to be listing level, probably wheelchair bound or bedridden to prove that they can't do sedentary work, right? And they have to prove they can't even do sedentary work. The sit down, easy, third grader, no stress, no dealing with the public, that job. So she's definitely not going to hone in on that if it's a mental case, right? I mean, it makes sense because it's not something that's going to change the outcome. It's either going to be one on the mental or it's not one on the mental. If it was a physical case, then yeah, she'd have to find out, are you wheelchair bound? Are you bedridden? And you know, maybe ask about the sitting, maybe not, because again, if you have a lawyer, it's your lawyer's job. If there's something about the sitting that isn't already in the record, you know, clearly, then that would be their job to do that, not her job. Her job is to hear you. Your job is to speak it. And like I said, when they ask questions in the beginning, when they choose to do that, aside from the who are you questions, I think that's because they're trying to get to the nitty gritty right then and there. The things that they already know they want to ask. And they don't want to, you know, if they let the lawyer go first, then they have to keep thinking the whole time, like, wait, did he ask this yet? Did he ask it? Okay, I got to still ask that. Did it, you know, and they can't focus. So they ask them off the bat. And then we lawyers have that trick of having to go back and go, wait, she answered this. She said this about driving. I got to make sure I follow up on that. We are multitasking because we are the second ones. All righty. But anyway, those are great questions, Jen, because I don't know that people were aware, you know, of how the hearings generally, who's responsible for speaking and all that. And when you have an attorney or non-attorney rep, the lawyer gets to sit back a little bit. Dolphin RD says, what medical records should I continue to keep after my SSDI approval? You don't really have to keep them because when you get a CDR in 1, 3, 5, 7 years, they're going to be asking for the last year or two, asking about them and then potentially ordering them with your 827. So you don't have to, but I always recommend, unless it's going to like really drag down your life. And I would say this is probably true for all of us. And I'm not even saying I do it. Probably when I move and have a different health provider, I will definitely get everything up to that point. I'll be moving in like a year. And I mean, it's a couple hours away, but far enough where I'm not going to come here for the doctor. I will be downloading my whole portal set in its entirety and just saving it someplace, and then, you know, starting afresh someplace else. But if you've prevailed and you are the type that want to do it, I would just say download them every year. Maybe in the beginning, maybe you want to do it every quarter just so you can, well, you don't have to download them. You could go in and look at them, but maybe you want to see what the doctor's notes look like. Are they still, when you talk about your continued pain, are they still putting it in there? Because if they're suddenly not putting it in there, not suddenly, but like they're pretty poor recorders. We all know that. That's what's going to be on your CDR if that's their way of doing it going forward. So for that reason, like monitoring the quality of the records from your provider who may or may not be very adept at doing that, that might be something. And of course, I mean, You're going to want to see any updated MRIs if it's physical problems. You're going to want to see, you know, did that show worsening? Compare it to the other one. Kathy Zaga. Hi, Kathy Zaga. I don't think we've met. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. Kathy says, I'm currently in medical review for SSDI. Ooh, and getting close to being drawn down to below 2,000 in total cash and bank accounts. Okay, that's only relevant if you're SSI, not SSDI, like you mentioned. I have a current mortgage loan of 200,000 K. Is it a good idea to apply for SSI? I always say yes. And I think this is what yeah. The reason why her question, she is filing for SSDI, but should she? I say, why not? Because you don't know. Let's say if you win, you do not know really when they are going to figure out your onset was, right? They could agree with you that it's on the onset date that you alleged in your application. Or they could say, we just found out, we just realized, we just got that MRI, Kathy, and it really shows what we needed to see. We got it yesterday and you had it 2 weeks ago. And so we're going to say you were disabled as of May 2026. Well, if you had an SSI application in May 26, June, July, August, September, October are non-payable because that's the waiting period. So SSDI is not paying you for those, and they're not paying you until the month later, but SSI could pay that because there is no waiting period. So that could be another $5,000 in your pocket. Again, that's if they find a later date, which is something unfortunate because it means you didn't get the SSDI instead, which would have been better. But the consolation prize would be the 5,000 or so, from the SSI. So I always think, and I tell my clients this too, when you're getting close, apply, or the second you bump under. The mortgage loan isn't going to affect that. The value of the home you live in at 200K, Kathy, is not going to affect the SSI. I think you know all this, but I'm saying it for everybody else. I'm assuming you don't have 401K out there and investments, a second piece of real estate that you don't live in, because that would be an investment asset, whether or not you're making money on it or not, that could be used to be sold or what have you to support you instead of SSI, welfare doing it. But assuming none of those things are true and that you don't have a spouse that has an income, that would, that money is deemed to you also. When we're married, we're kind of bound like that. Then, yeah, I would do it. You don't have 2 cars in your name, right? Nope. No funny bank accounts that you forgot that your name was on. Sometimes people have their older parent put them on there put their name on the account, even though the money's not theirs, so that if they need them to pay a bill because they're not well or something happens, they want that ease. That can foul up an SSI claim, but there is, just so you know, Palms, I think it's Palms, where if you can show that, no, that was her account, I'm on there only as a safety. It's not mine. I never spent any of it. And or if I had to go in there, it's because at her direction she needed her mortgage paid, and that's where it went. So I'm just the logistics. And they're supposed to honor that. I'm pretty sure there's some narrative in there in the Palms about that. So I think maybe if people attest to it, on maybe a 795 or something like that, that can be, and they might ask for, show us all the records, show us all the spending on that, Sounds like a good idea, Kathy. Jen says, I don't know, going back to the hearing, Jen just had her remand hearing, guys, so fingers crossed for her that she prevails. She says, I don't know, it's just suspicious. I'm hoping this is all because she already decided in favor. There are so many records since 2017 and in past testimony and things I wrote, but I'm not counting my eggs. Yeah, I know, and it's tough because all the, You've heard a lot about, and you've done a lot of research yourself, Jen, about the very arduous burden it is to prove one can't do any job out there. The simple, sedentary, blah, blah, blah. And very hard to get objective mental health records. If it's mental health, physical is much easier, except when it's certain things that they're really still kind of reticent on, like fibromyalgia. They're really, that's another tough one because the objective evidence is not really there. Some other ones like that. It's very frustrating. So Frederick says, can I use my children's address in San Diego if my ID is Miami, since I live by San Diego at this time? Well, use the address you're living at this time. If your ID, I think you probably mean your photo, like your state-issued photo ID. I mean, if you're just traveling, I mean, I would talk to the SSA about this, but, you know, just say, I stay a lot with my kids in, you know, California, even though my legal residence is here. When I apply, I'm going to be here. See, I think if you say, I don't know what the rules are. Every state has their own rules, but like, it might be where if you're here, if you're at some place more than 6 months of the year versus the other one, maybe we have an obligation to do something. I'm not sure because I don't do that, but I mean, when you go back to Florida, are you going to be able to get your mail? I mean, is there a reliable person? Is it your kid's address where you'll be staying? Because what if, well, I mean, assumedly you trust them to them scan it over to you or something, get it to your, in some way, shape, or form to your email or whatever. But I'm just wondering, is that because when you're away from Florida, traveling to California, you do not have, but you're saying you live in San Diego. You know, when you move, you have a certain amount of time to change your photo ID or else it's a violation. I know that's probably true of every single state. So when you're saying you live there, it's different than saying I visit here a lot. And by the way, that's a fuzzy line. So you can almost, in many instances, you can argue either one, you know, but then you have to kind of walk the walk. You know what I mean? Like if you've already filed for welfare out in San Diego, I mean, I'm pretty sure you have to say you're a resident. So you don't want to be, you know, playing both states, taking double monies, which people have done. Isn't that lovely? See, WC says, hello, are low approval ALJ judges mostly just more strict or mainly low approval because lack of medical? I'm going to say they're more strict, would be my take, because it would be really hard for me to believe that they just coincidentally get all the the lack of medical cases. So they have a stricter sense of how much weight a certain piece of evidence would be towards, you know, equating with a bigger limitation in that sitting, standing, walking, or whatever. Or if it's mental, you know, inability to deal with the public and leave the home or whatever. So I believe they're more strict because the other thing just wouldn't happen in nature, and they don't divvy up the cases like that. That would be a pretty horrible job to have. I'm the ALJ that they give all the cases that I have to deny. Can you imagine? Imagine coming home every night knowing you have to deny. Even if they have low medical, you have to deny, even if in your gut you know they're disabled because they didn't bother to get the evidence, right? And you can't substantiate it. You can't just award on a feeling. But yeah, I think they're more strict. I do. You can also know that there are some judges that are high approval judges. And that's not because they have more winning cases. I don't believe either. Like high medical. Well, I do think they have high medical anyway to win. But they don't have higher than the other, say, average judges. I think this is a judge that's just more believing that they met the high standard. I'd like to think nobody's contorting, well, I don't like the law that gives people it for, you know, let's say someone didn't like the grids. Nah, I don't think those 50 to 54-year-olds should be winning as much as they can when they can do sedentary work. It shouldn't be like that. And of course, as you know, the grids is not about giving someone SSD because they can do sedentary and no more. It's because from 50 to 54, we have a definite, scientifically recognized increase in the diminishment of our ability to adjust to other work, transfer the skills we had, or if we didn't have skills, just get into a totally different job. Our minds are not like sponges like they used to be for new things. That's why they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? But, I don't like it when people, and I don't think they do this. I don't. I don't like it when people in any area of law ignore the law that the legislature passed because you don't like it, so you're going to go rad and screw the voters that voted for this because I'm Stephanie and I think I get to make all the rules in the world. I don't like that. I want them to follow the rule, but there is going to be some discretion because we're human. So what evidence is persuasive enough is going to vary slightly among everybody, and then maybe on the outside it's like this. I also say for the people that don't like the law that they're supposed to enforce, quit, get a new line of work. And that's whether you're too high or too low. Adam's in the house. Hi, Adam. He says, hi, Stephanie and everybody else. I hope that you're all doing well. Yes, I'm doing well. Thank you. T Cash is in the house. Does someone on SSDI have to have a payee? No, most people do not at all have a payee. They control their own monies, spending and all that. And can a bank be a payee? You can't. The bank, it would have to be an institute to make an entity. The payee, it has to be an institutional, recognized by the SSA as being an institutional, I think they call it, representative payee. And there are companies that do it because some people simply don't have someone in their life that is trustworthy on their behalf, capable. Think about it. A lot of times, two people, it's kind of sad, but sometimes two people are disabled and on SSD. That's unfortunate, but that's not tragic. We all get older or, unable to work at some point, whether it's seniorhood or, younger. But I imagine that there is more than, I bet you there's some people who the married couple, both need to have representative payees, and it's probably like an adult child usually who handles the monies and gets those bills paid for them. Because if they're both not able to focus enough to pay the bills timely, or let's say they both forget they have bills and overspend. Amazon! So, yeah, T-Cash, it's only for those that have a recognized notably reduced capacity, I think, to handle their monies responsibly on their own behalf. It's not really a judgment call of how you spend it as long as you're using it to survive, because if you spend it all, then you're going to lose your roof. Dimple says, how do you prove that you mentally shut down in high-stress situations? Yeah. It depends what you mean by mentally shut down. Do you crawl on the ground under a rock? Do you run to the bathroom crying? Like, what's the shutdown? And how do you prove that? Well, have you had a high-stress situation at a doctor's office? I presume one would have mentally shut down there. But if it's just like I feel in my head that I can't really focus, it's going to be a lot harder. I think everyone goes to that, even when they're not necessarily disabled by it, but it would be limiting. Like, you don't want to be an airline pilot, because there are stressful situations and you're high up in the air and you can't be that guy, you know, you can't be that pilot. I'm trying to think. A therapist, talking to the therapist about how you shut down, and wanting to develop coping skills, so they'll focus on that, and therefore it'll be in the medical records too, that that's a problem. But you want to describe what happens when you mean shut down. Is it just that internal feeling, or is it obvious to those around you? Is it like distracting to others on the job because you start tearing up and then you get really upset and cry and have to leave the room, and now everybody's talking about it and thinking about it and feeling poopy? Do you know what I mean? So those things would matter. Family members can write 795 statements. That's SSA 795, the certified statement as to what they know and see. And presumably your third-party function report, they would have mentioned that, because there's a question there about stress. But that's not going to be medical evidence. That's not going to win you your case. It can be crumbs once the medical evidence there, and it's potentially persuasive on the whole case. Then that the adjudicator or the judge is going to be reading the function report and the 3380 to make sure there's nothing contradictory in there, because they don't want to be embarrassed and overturned if they award. Hey, AF Vet's in the house. Hello, Steph, he says. Hello to you too, AF. Nice to see you. JC's in the house. Hi, JC. If a person gets on SSDI and then doesn't work at all for 10 years, would they lose or keep their date-less insured status? Yes, they would. If lost, what would be the impact of this loss be during future CDRs? No, fortunately, it's told. Not TOLD, guys. We're not talking about talking. Told, TOLLED. So if you had 2 years left on the date that they found you disabled, not the date they did the action of finding you disabled, the date they established your disability date to be, let's say you have 2 years left, those 2 years are still going to exist if you get ceased on a CDR. You follow? So during the CDR, most people are continuing their disability because they're going to keep getting payments and stuff. But once they hopefully get through the CDR, but that 2 years still, that gets tacked right on the end there. So thankfully. And just to throw it in, guys, because I always talk about working while disabled, because I think it's great when you guys make money and can do things and go on vacation that you might not be able to afford on your fixed income. While you're disabled, some people do work a very tiny amount and make money, and then they not only can they push those credits out, so if something happens, they would have even more than that 2 years left over. Or let's say they only had 6 months. That's a really bad number. They can grow that out, and it could be 5 years ahead of them by working very minimal and within the parameters of SSDI, and not anything that's indicative of an ability to work full time, so long as they still always have their medical evidence being created and growing and updated, this and that, just to show that the impairments exist and they have not improved, and or any new impairments. So it's like a multi benefit to working well on disability if you just do it right. Kathy's confirming that she has no investment. So yeah, Kathy, I think start getting that paperwork together. I'm not sure if they take the basic information for SSI online now. I thought maybe they did. I always do mine on paper. I have the old form, and I'm not giving it. I mean, I share it to anybody who wants it. They don't actually send it out anymore, and they don't publish it anymore. But it solves the purpose. It gets the person's signature with the numbers, and you can start that now. Not that it's that complicated, but you may as well get it done. You've already done the 3368. When you get that in, they're supposed to, Kathy, merge the SSI get it up to speed so it now merges with the SSDI. So like if your SSDI is still on initial, the same medical evidence and everything else they got for the SSDI claim applies to the SSI finding too. And then if you're on recon, same idea, except I want to say they have to give it initial review on the SSI. But I'm thinking that would be an automated answer. So technically maybe they do, but automated because they already did the medical workup, which would be the same evidence, and they found you not disabled. So that non-disabled would have to be applied to the SSI, I believe. And then now they're merged together, doing the exact same thing as if you had applied together as you move forward. But yeah, you can get that SSI application information done. You could also do it on the phone. That to me is not as bad as doing the whole like SSDI application on the phone where you don't even know what they're putting down. Here it's going to be kind of obvious because it's just numbers. But you can do the written one too. Put your wet signature on it. They want a wet signature on the SSI applications, not like they won't even take it faxed. I don't know if that's changing. I kind of feel like they should change it if it's coming from an attorney or a non-attorney rep who is registered with them and has been with them for some time. Because, I mean, if it's a fraudulent signature, just come back to us if we made it up about some stranger. You know what I mean? Like, you know where to find us. I mean, the aspect of fraud is, I would think, almost obliterated. But, so generally speaking, wet signature with your hand on the SSI application. And then I would certify mail, return receipt requested, it, or UPS, or FedEx, or overnight it with USPS. But I wouldn't just send it regular mail, USPS. You have no proof that they got it. And it's going to be important, your proof date, because SSI does not go retroactive to the date you applied. So when they get it is when it will be the application. And what you can also do, let's say you're a little slower than that, and you know now you're below SSI. You can get a letter. You could do a letter that says, I'm making contact with you to let you know I'm going to apply for SSI. I would like today to be my protective filing date. I will have the rest of my materials in within, I think it's 60 days you have to have it in. And then fax it in. Keep a copy of your fax. You can mail it too, but fax, you got the fax confirm. And then get the whole kit and caboodle in. And so let's say you did that in June, the letter saying, hey, I'm going to apply. And then you get it in August, before the 60 days is up. Your application filing date is not going to be August. It's going to be June. And right now that's $2,000 to you, if you prevail. So it's worth it to get the protective filing date if you think you're not going to get it all in the same calendar month. ENS is in the house. Afternoon, I got found fully favorable on May 15th. That's awesome. Claim is at the processing center in Baltimore. Very glad to hear that. You should be getting paid really soon. That's fabulous. Thanks for reporting that to us. Everybody needs a little oomph here. Kathy says she has no car, so it sounds like you're good on the finances, or will be soon, which, of course, is not really a great thing. It means you've probably spent all your savings, but Rob Man is in the house and asks, how would I know when is my onset date? Lost job in 2007, had 3 back surgeries, 1997 in service, 2008 fusion, and now 2026. Well, if you've already won, it would be in the paperwork you got when you first won. You were found disabled as of this date. If you are claiming now, that's a you're talking about the alleged onset date, of course. If you're a claimant, are going to be, it's a multifactor analysis, really. For some people, it's going to be very simple and easy, because it's never going to be the earliest date it can possibly be is when you stopped earning SGA. Whatever day in that year, stopped earning SGA. You know that from when you, and by the way, that could mean you dropped from full-time work to part-time work, or from heavy part-time work to less part-time work, and you dropped under SGA. That, if that's because of disability problems, and assuming you were I mean, that would probably be the date I would use, and then hope that there's treatment records. Because sometimes the person says, yeah, but I didn't go to a doctor back then. I'm like, at all? You just suffered for 3 years, you know? So sometimes I will use that date. And then if we ever have to go to a judge, because we were denied the whole kit and caboodle anyway, that would be something I would consider amending with the judge. I want to amend the alleged onset date. Well, usually if they bring it up, I'll do it. But we have discussed it already. Hey, you got zero evidence between, 07 and 2010. Well, although you did because you had surgeries, but presumably it sounds like you were still working until more recently. But the date that you go under SGA would be the first earliest date you would consider. If you stopped working SGA because you went and had kids and wanted to stay home with them, be a stay-at-home parent, then obviously that wouldn't be the date because you weren't disabled then, you just had other plans in life. And then something happened after that, then that would be if you had an acute accident. That's often a very easy way to figure that out. Sometimes it's a little more, gentle than that. Sometimes someone has an acute accident, don't work for 3 months. They're treating. They try to go back to work. They work full time for 4 months. Then they stop because of the pain. They can't do it. They can't keep up, or they drop down to part time. Now they're under SGA. We would actually go pick that earlier date before they even went back to work for 4 months as the onset date. And we would be arguing that 4 months was a failed work attempt. It didn't last 6 months. It's clearly ended because of his medical problems. And that's how we try to get, the oldest, realistic, truthful onset date. It'll depend if there was, sufficient treatment at that time. After they stop the SGA is when you really want to bang into that, that vigorous treatment the most. The stuff you do before when you're still doing SGA, unfortunately can't prove that you're disabled under the law. It can be historical, but you actually were still able to work full time with it. So in some senses, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. We really kind of look at it closely to see, probably you should go get some vigorous treatment now before we apply you, because you were doing this construction job, when you were, saying that. So you're welcome, Kathy. Jen says, notably, there was extensive conversation between the VE, ALJ, lawyer in terms of absences this time. Good. They even talked about how likely is it for someone to get through the probationary period given XYZ. That's good. Your lawyer, that was your lawyer probably that instigated that, right? Or did the judge? If the judge did it, it would give me a little sparkle of hope more than if it was just the lawyer. I mean, it's good that he brought it up anyway, because that would be something that potentially would be an appealable issue if it, goes sideways. But when the judge brings it up and then the response from the VE is quite favorable. Sorry, it's getting warm in here and I have the door open, and I bet you my tortoise went outside. Oh, she did. Out on the deck. It's the only place she can go. It's all blocked off. She likes the sun. That happened one time, guys. It was still cool. It was like earlier in the spring and it was rainy and nasty, and I had the door open a crack back when it was nice, and I forgot, and she walked out, and I was losing it because I was like, oh my God, I was neglectful and I forgot, and the door was open and she went out. And she was out there. It was nasty out now. And I'm like, she might have pneumonia. I think she was out there overnight. It's pretty bad. By the time I even realized she was gone, because you can call her name and she doesn't answer. It's very frustrating. I've told her time and time again she's got to answer, but she doesn't. Baxter Taylor's in the house. Hi, Baxter. I don't know that we've met. Does a diagnosis from SSA's own doctor stated I am unskilled and reduced to light work? Can I apply this to my new case? Ooh. If you have that report, yeah, I would throw it in there because it's a doctor that said it a few years ago. Maybe back when you were under 55, right, Baxter? And so the reduced to light work wouldn't win your case because you could do light or sedentary work. Plenty of jobs you can do. And the grids don't protect you when you're 50 to 54 if you can do light work. But I would put it in as evidence of if it existed then and I haven't gotten better, you know, then you know. And it doesn't mean that they believed that CE, but they probably did because they probably ruled that you could do light work and that's how they got their denial on you the last time. So I would put it in. Sometimes you can use something like that too, guys. If you have a doctor, and then like the orthopedic, let's say it's orthopedic, and that's why you are, or musculoskeletal joints and such, reduced to light work. If you have a doctor who already knows how damaged your body is, how limited it is, and if they are, supportive of you, whether you know it, if they know that you do SSDI claim or not, if they do, sometimes you can give them what the other doctor said and just said, this is what I believe to be accurate. I might be a little bit worse off than he describes, but this is sufficient representation for my purposes. Would you want to do a paragraph explaining how, your objective findings from the MRI of this, that, and the other thing, or from your medical records, and maybe, you could point out a couple, you would expect, I wouldn't tell him to say light work. I would suggest he say, whatever makes it light. Is it because you can't lift over 10 pounds, can't lift over 20 pounds, and that keeps you in light by law, the definition? Or is it because you cannot be on your feet for 6 of 8 hours? Either of those two, if you can't do it, you cannot do a full range of light work. Now, granted, you might be able to do a smaller range of light work, and that's not wonderful. But in your case, all you need to do is prove that you can't do light work because you're going to be meeting that grid, and you don't have to do that other, yeah, but what about these other light jobs? Yes, I know. Someone's home, and they're making a ruckus. Tosh, it's all good. Okay? You right? Anyway, for those that don't know, Tasha, that's our girl. She gets a little excited when people come home. So yeah, I would use that. That's excellent. And that's a really good point. Maybe I'll do a video on that because it's something people might not think about. You have to know the grid rules, and you, Baxter, I think, do, because you probably wouldn't have brought it up if you didn't. And you saw what it was and it did to you before 55, and now you know the rules of that very same letter would now, because the law changes for you, because you're getting to be an old coot like myself. I'm kidding. You can use it. I would use it. Just making it so far is in the house. Hey, good morning. Judge accepted my OTR and gave me a fully favorable. Yeehaw! Thanks for all your help with your videos. Oh my God, that's awesome. Did he give you an OTR? Like, did you not have to have a hearing? Just? Because that's not that typical. So I'm very impressed. Did you do it yourself? Or did you have representation? Either way, it's all fantastic. That's 2 good newses today, guys. I'm very happy to hear that. Neither one of my clients, just so you know. I'm not touting my horn with that. I'm just really happy for them. Dimple says, it's a combination of having to excuse myself in super high stress. Did that when I worked in healthcare many years ago, but mainly shifting focus to watching grass grow or paint dry when overly stressed. I think that's something you would talk to the therapist about. And that is the avenue for getting a medical record of it, right? If you don't have a therapist and your PCP is probably not going to write it down because he's not treating you for that, that's where it can you are making it into evidence. What is your reality by getting the kind of mental treatment that would be able to discuss the patient complaints and all that. Yeah. So like basically it sounds like you close up, right? Um, your mind goes blank maybe. It's protecting itself from the what's going to happen if you don't, like the stress. Maybe you get heart palpitations or feel nauseous, or they're going to go into a full-blown panic attack. So this is the defensive mechanism that your body has opted for. You know, Dimple goes on to say, thinking that rheumatologist or PCP needs to have this in the records because mental therapists may not disclose records. Yeah, you don't know, right? One way to know if your therapist early on is going to give up records, perhaps is to order them, guys, and see what they produce. But yeah, that is a problem. I've discussed this a lot, as you know, on here about mental health therapists that, are king and make the decision that, no, I'm going to just keep those records to myself. It doesn't matter if you have to live under the bridge, because you can't win your case without them. But no, I'm a therapist, and it's my virtue signaling duty to withhold these from you, which it's not. But okay. Yeah, then how are you going to do it though, Dimple? Because if you say to your rheumatologist, I want you to put things in the record about my mental health, they're going to look at you like, no, lady. And your PCP might too, depending on your PCP. Some people are super tight with their PCP. I don't have one like that, but that's like old days, right? But you could do that particularly to the PCP because that would be someone that you kind of talk about all your medical issues with. A rheumatologist, unless you could somehow tie it to rheumatology, which I don't know if you can do. I don't know if that would work. But your PCP, what about if it's a PCP with a portal? And if it's not, do the same by faxing them a letter and saying, hey, put this in my file for the doctor when I come in on, I just feel like he needs to know everything that's going on with me at my next annual or whatever's coming up. But you could say, I have this ongoing issue. It's been going on for a number of years, but perhaps it's getting worse or whatever. It interfered with my last job, and then eventually everything prevented me from start working. But when something stressful would happen, or does, I could be out and about. Like let's say I'm at the grocery store, whatever I'm doing just to get through my day's living. And if I see an argument in front of me or someone upset or whatever the stressful thing is, or it could be a variety of things, I'm sure, I just blank out. I just feel like I blank out. Like I don't walk away because I'm stuck where I am, but I suddenly am riveted to a spot on the floor and I'm just like frozen. And my mind is like, shut off. Porch lights on, but nobody's home. You could do that in a message to them. That way you don't have to rely on them taking the time to dictate it into the records, and they don't treat for that. Because they should keep everything you ever send to communicate them anything about your body or your mind. Period. So probably their medical association requires that too. Patient communications. If you send them a journal about like your life's history, your autobiography, no. But if it's, a note about your current dilemmas and symptoms, and I'm thinking this might be, impacted by my pain. Is that why I'm doing it? Or, but anyway, I just wanted it in my file so you're aware of this extra part of me that might be, because, all these other things that go on with us, that are outside the purview of any particular doctor can, of course, potentially influence something else. Like, God, I'm gonna be able to think of an example on the top of my head, but um, well, mental health struggles and treatment can be impacted if a doctor gives you an opioid for physical pain. You know what I mean? Like, they need to know everything if you know, if they're competent, generally speaking. Kathy says wet signature for SSI protective filing date is important info. Thanks. SSI wet signature on the SSI application. I'm trying to think what that number is. I think it's the SSA-8000. If you needed a blank copy, I could get it to you because you're probably not gonna. You might not find it online. I don't know if they have it back. They didn't for years and years because they wanted everybody to call. It's like my people are not calling you. Not for that anyway. Um, Protective filing date. Well, since you're doing it, you may as well sign it. But I've thrown in protective filing dates for people that, and I just sign it and say I'm contacting you on behalf of so and so. She is going to be putting in a SI application, so please use this as a protective filing date. This is consider this the contact. Although I think I did read something. Did I read this? I don't want to speak out of turn. There was something that came up a few months ago on here, I think, where they weren't honoring something because, was it the protective filing? I don't know if it had to do with the claimant signature or if the, I don't know, if the in-house people. I'm going to speak out of turn. I may as well just be quiet on that one. But when in doubt, sign them both. How about that? Dimple, if my doctor has noted this on occasion, maybe not recently, I'm wondering if it should be brought up at more. Yes. I don't know which. Again, I don't know if whether rheumatology is going to want to hear about it, you know, but PCP is supposed to be that big umbrella guy that knows about all of our stuff, right? He's the primary. He's the one that refers us out if we have issues. So, yeah, you could try both of them, but for sure, PCP. Um, Oh, Jenny says, Dimple, why not go to a mental hospital during those stress episodes? You are allowed. By the way, you might actually be dealing with emotional dysregulation and or emotional flashbacks. You know, if it was an emergency type thing, I could see that. I don't know that it is though. I mean, it sounds limiting, yes, to high skilled work, but or certainly one that doesn't allow for interruptions like that. But I'm not sure if that would be the type of thing you want to go to a ER for. They're going to turn you around and send you out. And I know your point, Jen, is probably like, there's evidence. And I get your point. Um, I just don't know that this is, you know, that kind of severity where we would want to necessarily abuse the hospital when we don't have to. But Jen's point is well taken, guys, because sometimes people don't have anyone that they can see about a particular issue. And I say, if it is an emergency, usually I'm thinking severe pain that's not going to resolve. Obviously, a little close down for a 5-minute stressful notation is gonna end in 5 minutes. But there are people that I've seen, I mean, can't get off the couch because of severe back pain. Something happened to the back. Something got pulled, and they are. I mean, I've had this happen to me where if I take enough ibuprofen, it will go away in a few hours, and it doesn't happen often, thank goodness. But it's where you can't breathe, right? It's something's in there so tight that if you breathe, you know, it's just like freaking out on you. Um, but I always say to people about that because if that's the kind of pain, it's like an 8 out of 10, probably an 8 out of 10 because if you lie there, it doesn't hurt as much. So I'm going to go with 8, guys. Oh, this 10 out of 10 is not usually believable, so try to avoid that. I always say, you know, if you go there, they will give you something to make the pain go away this time. And you won't be sitting there for 18 hours in a level 8 pain where you can't even get up to go to the bathroom and you're going to wet your pants or poop them. Um, Willie says, does the earnings from a failed work attempt count towards SGA? Um, yes. The only reason you have to argue it's a failed work attempt, Willie, is because it was over SGA. So if it was under SGA, it's not past relevant work. Well, we're talking about two different issues now, right? But yeah, if it's under SGA, you don't have to get rid of it all because you can be disabled while doing that kind of work. But because it was over SGA, it is evidence of not being disabled, and you're trying to argue that that's not true. It was such a temporary improvement that I was able to go back and earn SGA because it didn't last 6 months, that failed work attempt, UWA, unsuccessful work attempt, and that's how that works. So yes, the earnings are what made it SGA, which is why you're trying to say, well, wait a minute, it's a failed work attempt. Doesn't count for curbing, like closing the case. And that's what the failed work attempt is. It is to prevent it from closing the case if you have a pending claim in particular, but they also apply later on after you've won, because they do want people to try. So, but they want them to know that if you try and you fail in these parameters, it's not going to be considered, a cessation causing stint of SGA work. 7X says, did you change your name again? Because I see your picture. I assume that's you in the picture. Wow, I do have an attorney. July will be 1 year on reconsideration. This is taking forever. Yeah, I'm sorry. Your attorney probably knows if you have an adjudicator. I wouldn't be surprised if you do now. If you don't now, you probably have to contact the congressman and say, hey, I think this fell in the crack. Can you just send a congressional inquiry to the SSA about, what's going on in case it fell in the crack and you didn't get assigned to the next adjudicator, But it's possible you got one 4 months ago and now it's actually being worked on, and that takes usually more than 4 months. Although reconsideration, I'll still say the same. Yeah, it's a long time, 7X. Robin says, okay, thanks. You're welcome. 7X says, I think he requested an update, and he said, just expect a hearing, and I'll be another 6 months after this denial. All right, that's just a blanket answer. Well, it's funny. Who do you request the update? I mean, I have a case right now. It's on initial. It's at the DDS. It's early on, but it's getting old. They're not doing anything on it, so I don't think there's an adjudicator. But a weird thing has gone on where I cannot upload. Normally, when it's sitting there waiting for an adjudicator, I'm getting evidence. I'm uploading it. I'm notifying them when there's new providers so that they can jump in and order them and pay for them so my guy doesn't have to. All that kind of stuff. And I can't. It gives a message that says, you're not able to do that at this time. And I'm like, for goodness sake, why? It's not like it's a paper file because I see it's in the electronic records express. I've never seen this before. So I was doing I wanted fax numbers to the DDSs. And I was trying to get someone to do some research on that, but nothing came up with any reliable source of the fax numbers for each state's multiple DDS offices. That's annoying. There should be. And so it looks like I'm going to have to be sitting on the phone. And I try to avoid that because it takes valuable time out of working on cases. Granted, you can sit on hold and, I'm sorry, I'm rolling around. Sit on hold and get some work done. But my problem is I get so involved in my work, like if I'm working on a case. And then when the person answers, I'm like, oh my God, who was I calling? I have to leave a note for myself because I get so wrapped up in whatever it is I'm doing. Dolphin says, we're an hour in, by the way. Do 100% rating disabled vets with Purple Heart get immediate SSDI approved at 59 years old? Absolutely not, as far as I know. 100% P&T rated disabled vets get priority level in terms of kind of jumping to the front of the line in terms of getting their cases processed at the, from inception to move on to the DDS. I believe if there's an adjudicator, his case is waiting, he might go to the end of the veteran portion of those people waiting for an adjudicator instead of going to the end of the full line. So it's more of a prioritization of timing. It's not a put the thumb on the merits of the case and, So I do not think so, RD. That's not that I've looked up Purple Heart with it, but the rest of it I know. And that would just be my strong suspicion, that a Purple Heart doesn't get you to be found disabled if you don't have the evidence to support it. Tony P says, is there a limit on how long you can get SSD, assuming your condition doesn't get better? You can get it till you're 67 or whatever your full retirement age is. And then it stops because it flips over into the retirement that you had been paying for with the same money as you paid for SSD coverage. Sound good? Willie says, if you stopped working less than 6 months and that was a failed work attempt, when should you set your AOD? If you stopped working, it would be, generally speaking, without knowing all your dates, it would be before the break before the less than 6 months work. And sometimes people have had multitudes of those for a few years. And we've gone back 4 years, When all those little breaks, they kept trying to go back to work. Some people are just really ambitious that they want to work. They don't want to be disabled. I mean, most everybody I know. Some will actually get out there contrary to their body's needs. And those are the kind of people that would probably do the 4 years. Like, it wasn't good for them to do this, but they're like, no, I got a house and, we're going to lose a mortgage and I got kids. What am I going to do? Life's expenses, particularly when they have family members, right? Because we do anything for our families. But that's when it would go kind of old, go way, way back. So it really depends. Like if you had 6 months, 4 months here, you had been out for 3 months. Maybe you had a shoulder surgery and you had 3 months of recovery. Then you try to go back to work again, but then it was so bad you still couldn't lift. They said, oh, you got. And then before that surgery, you had worked for 3 months, but 3 months. Then there was a break before that because you did the other surgery. I mean, there can be so many things to look at. And remember, your alleged onset date, if you don't peg it in earlier, they probably will not look and say, well, we're going to kind of sua sponte, pick an earlier date because we can see it in the medical records. And we're going to look through his earning. No, because they're going to go with what you say. So if you don't claim it, they're not going to go suggest it. So it is probably better to err on the side of an older date if you're not sure. They're not going to give it to you if they can't, even without the medical not being there. Like if turns out you earn too much and whatever. Hope that answered that, Willie. Willie says, my therapist has been awesome about records and supporting documents for my claim. Well, that's terrific. Shannon D's in the house. Hi, Shannon. Hello. I'm on 3.5 years since starting SSDI application. My health has gotten worse now into my second application. All right. So you're. It's not been 3.5 years, right? That was when you did your first one. Sounds like you went through the whole rigmarole. Did you go all the way to ALJ hearing, get denied, and then do a second application? And I have more diagnoses. My providers do not want to do an MSS prior to hearing. I don't blame them. Most of them won't. So that's not how most people win. If they have good records, if they're competent, recorders, then that's really all you need, right? I don't count on MSSs. They're nice when we can get them. Not all cases are even appropriate for it. Sometimes an MSS will hurt your case more than help it. So it's something that's got to be done very carefully. G-Man says, regarding SSI, I understand that under 65, you may need to jump through hoops with justifying medical issues. You have to prove you're disabled. You know, if you're able to work at 63, for sure, you're not going to get SSI welfare for the disabled. And that's under 65, it's about being disabled and poor. Over 65, being over 65 and poor. You don't have to be proving disabled, just to be poor over 65. Perhaps such class justification take much time as in months, years, denials. Yeah, I mean, if you're not disabled, you're not going to get disability, and that's SSI disability income. Yeah. J-Man continues to say, but what about no medical issues? Yeah, you're not going to get welfare for disabled people if you're not disabled. I'm just applying because I'm 65. That's different. You're 65. If you're poor, you don't have to be disabled. They recognize that we old folks at some point cannot be expected to necessarily continue to work. Won't work for SSD, but it'll work for SSI. 65 and poor. Meet the SSI things that everybody else meets, and you can get the SSI. Now, they will, if you have Social Security retirement available to you, which you would after 62 if you had worked during your life sufficiently, which most people have, then they're only going to give you the bumper to get you up to the SSI amount. So let's say if your Social Security retirement is $3,000, you're never going to get that SSI because they're going to say you got $3,000 from that, you have too much income. You can't say, but I don't want to file for that because I just want to get the money from the taxpayers and not from what I paid in. That's not how it's going to work. It's required. That's countable income that you could be collecting that you're not. So, and I understand why someone's not, because they want to wait. They want their Social Security to grow, and get, at least get to the normal age of 67, and then some people go till 70. I'm kind of hoping I could do that, but we'll see. Because I just want it to be bigger in case I live long. So you have met the age. You don't have to prove you're disabled, but you still have to prove you're poor. And any Social Security retirement that you could be filing for, which you can at any point after 62, you're just going to suffer a penalty, is going to count. So if you had really low Social Security retirement amount estimate, you can go look at your form if you haven't filed yet. You could get, like, let's say you have $500. That's all you earned and paid in for over your entire lifetime. That's really low. That means you either didn't work or you didn't declare it and pay taxes, didn't pay the premiums. Then SSI could be the other 500 to get you up to that near 1,000 we're talking about. You don't need to justify your low income. You just have to be low income. Unless, of course, you're not low income and you're hiding it. I mean, that's, Yeah, so you don't have to justify it. You could just not work at 65. But you're going to have all your potential incomes, savings accounts, Social Security retirement account that you could be pulling from. Everything you could be pulling from is going to count. All right, 401ks, things like that. And that's going to be the part about the income, because people forget that, you mean I have to take the Social Security retirement? I'm like, yes, you do, because otherwise your neighbor's paying your rent for you, and he can't even put savings in his own account. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's struggling to keep a roof over his head with his job, and now you got to take your own. Kathy says, thanks for SSI form number. I just uploaded it. Oh, so is it available on the internet now? And printing it out, 24 pages. Oh my God, it used to be a lot. It used to be like 9 pages, 8 pages. So that kind of stinks. I wonder if they just spread it out because people can't read as well as they used to, or if they have more robust questions in there so they don't have to do as much on the phone. That would actually be good. Otherwise, they're really super quick. G-Man says, question mark? I'm not sure what the question marks do. Baxter says, does the ALJ have to give judgment by the grid rules? Does the ALJ have to give judgment by the grid rules? Well, if the grids apply, of course. And the grids are going to say disabled or not disabled. Not based on your age alone, but based on all, did you meet all three prongs applicable to your age? Okay. But yeah, he's got to. If he skipped the grids and held someone disabled who the grids would have found disabled, it will be appealable. Yeah, and it might actually be a full-blown reversal because he found all the things that the law requires to be disabled. He found them. He said them. And then he said, not disabled. That would be the kind of thing that would be a reversal because they don't have to question whether he, you know, failed to apply a rule, you know. He already made the findings. They're respecting that. And the findings themselves under the law say you're disabled. Jen says, oh, well, our society makes us think we have to just muster through things that are actually in reality urgent in nature. By Dimple watching paint dry, she is doing one thing you are allowed to go to. Well, we're allowed to do a lot of things. And sometimes they tear us down because we did and we didn't, you know. So that's a real personal, that's a personal thing. Like the second you feel like not, like closing off your need of a psychiatric hospitalization. I don't know. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. Um, you got to remember, I'm the type of person that's more of, you know, you don't automatically assume you're going to be disabled for a brief momentary issue that you know resolves in short order. Now, let's say it was something like chest pain. Well, that could be a heart attack in the moment, right? Or anxiety attack. And I think it's almost anyone can mistake that and not know because you don't know. I mean, unless you die from it, then you know it was a heart attack. So you don't want to. I'll give you an example, a different example. My husband a year and a half ago woke up. He was out in the Harrisburg place, and he was supposed to come home that morning. He had the day off, and he said, "Oh, I'm all ready to go, all packed up, but I have a problem." I'm like, "What's that?" And he says, "My face is drooping." This is like 8 in the morning, and my legs are feeling really weak. And I'm like, ugh. And so I persuaded him to call the ambulance. I said, what if you're having a stroke? Call the ambulance. You know, we've never done that. I mean, normally I would be there and I could have driven him, you know. But we were 2.5 hours apart. So he did that. And it turns out he had attack of Bell's palsy, which he'd never had before. But the drooping face is also a sign of stroke. And as you probably all know, if you don't hit a stroke right away with medical care, you could be dead or very permanently disabled. So that kind of obvious nature. I mean, every time I cry, I don't go to the psychiatric hospital. You know, if I cry over something, even if I wish I didn't cry, and you know, or if I get super ticked off and I throw out a couple drunken sailor curse words and I regret it, I don't take myself to the psychiatric hospital. Yes, I failed. I did what I lost my cool. I didn't mentally rise to the challenge of that particular stressful situation, but I don't know that means I got to, go to try to get myself committed or voluntarily or whatever, or the ER for that, because I know it's not going to be an emergency situation. I screwed up. I was weak, whatever. Mentally weak. Mentally, I had a weakness that didn't let me, handle that properly. So, and it's just, something that's off with me. The one I'm describing about myself would be something that I actually can better control when I put intention behind it. What the other person is talking about, not necessarily so. Depends. But I don't know that it just means anytime someone has a poor reaction to something, one that they didn't desire, it's time to flood the hospitals. There's people that really need them. I mean, we don't even have enough. That's all I'm saying. And if we did that, then all the people that really need psychiatric hospitalizations, beds, you know how they're always short on beds, they'd be the real people that need them profoundly um, at various times in their life. They would not be able to get them. So we have to be careful with that, I think. Um, so yeah, you want a break, so you go to one, but I don't know. I don't know that that's for everybody. Dimple says, thanks for the info and advice. My stress just shuts me down for a few minutes and interfere with my former high-stress job. But since I work from home, coworkers didn't see. Yeah, that's going to be hard to... And that brings up the point, too. Like, if you were at a job where coworkers could see, and it's, recent before you stopped working or whatever, um, and they did see things where they could see on your face, like, and then you would always leave the room and go to the bathroom or something. And they're always saying, Susie, are you okay? Are you okay? And then, maybe you have a friend in the office and you actually tell them what happens. That would actually be good evidence if they did a 795, to what happens. Um, and that it happened not infrequently or whatever. The Knob's in the house. Hey there, Rance. It's good to see you again. Good afternoon. I wanted to let you know I got my benefit approval letter yesterday. Thanks for all you do. I'm so happy. Awesome. God, we've got a lot of good news here today, guys. I'm really glad to hear that. Baxter says, I have not worked since 2018. My DLI is 2023. Does the 5-year rule apply to me? Well, yes. It applies starting December 31st, 2023 and going back to probably, this might be the good news, because you worked most of 2018. That year you earned all your credits, even though you didn't work till the end of the year. This is kind of important. I think I did a video on this because it came up with one of my hearings this year. When you go 5 years back to from December 31st, 2023, the end of that 5 years, I believe, is January 1st, 2019. So you got all of 2019, 2020, 21, 22, all of 2023. That's 5 years. This is where it can benefit you, Baxter. You stopped working 4 months or 3 months, probably almost 4 months earlier than your look back 5 years. So now they can never say you have unskilled work, and this will depend on if you're with grids. It's not going to really affect younger people, but you have no work, no past relevant work. So they can't say, can he do his prior job? They can't look at that September 3rd job and say, could he do this job? If he can, he loses at step 4, and you never really get to go on to step 5. If they say there is no past relevant work, you pass step 4, and now you just have to prove you can't do all the other jobs. And if you're gridding, that's super important because that's one of the grids. Can you do your old job? It's actually 2 grids, two prongs of the grid. You can't do your old job because you didn't have one in the relevant time period that you have to disprove, and there are no transferable skills from a job you didn't have in the last 5 years. So that's prong 2 and 3. This is if you're over 50, and then you just have to meet prong 1. Christina's in the house. Hello from California. Hello to you too, Christina. I hope you're doing okay. Shannon says, I'm at federal level with my first application. I'm going to get a water gun, and I'm going to shoot this dog. I should have brought it in here. Whining out the door. That's the Bernese. I want to wring her neck. I'm at a federal level. Maya, no. I'm at federal level with my first application and now at ALJ with my second application. Okay. So okay. So you appealed your first application that got denied at ALJ and Appeals Council, and that's often federal district court, totally separate. And then she has a new second application. and it's at the ALJ with that one. I guess we're gonna have to do them separately. If your federal level one resolved before you had your hearing, they would merge. But looks like it depends when your hearing is going to be. They will merge it if you haven't had it yet, and then he will be deciding the whole kit and caboodle at each point, because you could win it. Sounds like you still had a DLI left over after your last case went down, which is great, and so you could do another filing. So he could find that the old one, yes, indeed, that I made a mistake, or you probably have a new judge now, actually, made a mistake. There was enough evidence back then. This is just done wrong here. And she gets all the way back to then, which means, and they always have to find out that you're still disabled to this day. So you always have to keep your medicine, your medicals going while you're waiting for hearing. And of course, to some degree after you prevail for your next CDR. Can you explain your free eval for SSDI, please? Thank you. Well, thank you, Rob. That means if someone is looking for representation on the medical workup, including before the application and all the way through, or at any point in between. I just don't usually take them the eve of hearing because I just don't have enough time to do our magic and to give you advice that you can actually follow. But and there are exceptions to that, but that's generally it. If you're looking for an attorney or non-attorney rep, we have an evaluation system and we go through them. And then if they pass certain criteria, they come to me and I make a phone call. And that's how that works. And it doesn't cost the person anything. Granted, there's no guarantees, obviously, either. You're welcome, G-Man. Jen says, it absolutely depends case by case and how much other help money you have, but I find a lot of people aren't aware of the severity of their mental health conditions and hence why we have sudden suicides. Yeah, I hear you entirely on that one. And the sudden suicides are probably not even always so sudden, right? But we don't see the signs. They don't really, the ones that actually do it often don't maybe show it a lot beforehand, right? That's how much pain they're in. They can't even communicate it. It's very sad. Mr. P, do you know if you can win a case for SSDI if you keep going over SGA due to understaffing and call-outs? I'm on reconsideration. Will they look at my week hours, or is that SSA, not DDS? Yeah, they all look at that because the DDS is doing the adjudication and the sequential evaluation process. The first question is he doing SGA? If you are on and off SGA, assuming it hasn't been enough to put you into what would be retroactively your 3-year EPA, extended period of eligibility, where you'd have months not due you, and then if it's after the 3 years, the first month of SGA means ding, 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 not disabled. The thing is, you're doing over SGA, you're able to do over SGA whenever there's understaffing or callouts. It suggests optically that you can do SGA. If I were you, I'd be very clear. I mean, if you can, that I cannot do more hours in this, period, end of story. No, I cannot pick up other shifts, because you are going to, if you don't screw yourself now, you will screw yourself if you win. You will lose it. You will also get overpayments, probably, and have some debt, and then lose them altogether in time. So sometimes you have to, put on the big boy pants and say to the boss, listen, I can't do this. You don't have to tell them why. Just say, I have other obligations. I can't pick up these cases. You can't do that. Or whatever it is. I don't know how you would say it, but because I think if you keep doing it, yes, it's going to, it depends on how much you're doing it, but eventually any of it is going to, any continuing, even if it's sporadic, SGA will eventually get you to lose your benefits if you win them at all. All right. Willie says, darn, missed your responses because I had a telehealth call. I'll look back when this is live. Oh, oh, that's so funny. I felt like I was talking to you when I was answering them, but you weren't even here. All right, guys, we are at an hour and a half. Hi, Deanna. Good to see you. Mr. P says, I don't mind is, got to see the end of that. There are no questions after that, guys, though. Like I said, we are kind of slim today. I didn't create this live stream till right before I did it because I thought it was already set up. Yeah. It's been like that. YouTube is taking a little bit of a hit with the busyness around here, but that is easing up slowly but surely, and which is really cool. So anyway, all right. So I don't see any more questions. If anyone has anything they want to share, any kind of questions, I am happy to answer them now. Otherwise, we're going to say adieu, and I hope to see you guys next week. Right? I'm here. Yep, next week, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will get that thumbnail up there under the lives coming up. The live streams coming up. Usually I like to have 4 ahead of me, but that 4 weeks just flies. I had 4. I'm like, what happened to them? I went through them all. I guess so. And then, of course, if you turn on the 12 p.m.s, usually 12 p.m., daily pre-recorded, that is super helpful, guys. It really supports the channel and the mission, which is, as you know, the 1%, 5% crowd. Memberships, of course, also help. But anyway, and for those of you that don't know, and this would be probably the small minority of people that would even do a consultation, membership gets you membership at the top tier, which is like the dedicated or something like that. I believe you get like 2/3 after you've been a member for, I think, at least 2 months. If you need a consultation, you get 2/3 of the price off of the normal one. 2/3 off. I think it's about 2/3 off. So it can be a little bit of money saving anyway, because I know they're not cheap. But since they're not what I'm in here to do business for per se, it's really representing clients as their appointed attorney representative. That's how we do that, so we can do it all and not do. It also helps with the pro bono work too, affording that. So anyway, hope you guys all have a great one. I hope we have good weather coming up everywhere in the country. Hope everyone's doing super well. And yeah, if you have any questions of any kind, you can always put them under any video. I have to get to this, the thing I should have done this morning I didn't do because I went to my physical therapy, and that's why I was kind of running late, and it was after getting in from Harrisburg yesterday. So I had some things to catch up on, but yeah, I'll get through them, and I will give an answer, either typed out or dictated, or I will do a video on it for you. Send me a question that's the kind that you can do that for. All right. I will chat with you later. No more questions, right? All right. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.